Imagine living in a place where the cold is not just a season, but a constant, unrelenting presence. The biting wind, the short days, and the ice covering the streets. But why would anyone choose to live in places like this? The truth is that the human relationship with the cold goes far beyond physical discomfort. For some, facing the ice is a test of resilience, a daily battle against nature that requires strength, both body and mind. In these icy regions, life happens at a different pace. Have you ever stopped to think what it would be like to live in an endless winter, where the simple task of going out to work becomes a mission that few can face? The coldest cities in the world are not just a physical challenge, but a mental one. The cold affects everything, from the way people interact to their cultural traditions. And here, the echoing question arises: could you handle it? Temperatures can drop to unbelievable levels, freezing not just bodies, but entire lives. Living in a place like this is much more than just surviving. It's learning to live with isolation, darkness, and the constant fight against freezing. For many, this is not just a place they live, but a way of being. But can humans really adapt to such extreme temperatures? Let's explore how people deal with the cold in the coldest corners of the planet. And in the end, perhaps you will discover something you never imagined about these regions and about yourself. Click like and subscribe to the channel. Yakutsk, situated in the heart of Siberia, is a place where winter is not just a season, but a permanent state. The city is known for its temperatures that can easily plummet below 40 degrees C. The simple act of breathing can be painful, and leaving the house without the correct layers of clothing is unthinkable. But, incredible as it may seem, Yakutsk is a vibrant city where more than 300,000 people call home. How is it possible to live in a place where the cold is so relentless? The routine of Yakutsk residents is a real challenge to human resistance. From public transport to everyday activities, everything needs to be adapted to survive the extreme cold. Clothes, for example, are not just a question of style, but of survival. Residents wear multiple layers of wool and fur to protect themselves from the biting cold. And the buildings, they need to be designed to deal with permafrost, that layer of frozen ground that remains rock-hard year-round. But, as difficult as it may seem, life doesn't stop in Yakutsk. People continue to work, study, and even celebrate life in temperatures that would make many of us give up. Eternal winter becomes an inseparable part of your identity. The local market is a curious example of this. Instead of refrigerators, traders simply display food outdoors, where natural ice effortlessly preserves everything. The cold may dominate the city, but the resilience of its inhabitants is what really stands out. They found ways to turn that adversity into strength. Extreme cold shapes culture, lifestyle, and even the way people see the world around them. And while many of us complain about winter, Yakutsk residents embrace it as a vital part of who they are. Norilsk is a city that looks like something out of a science fiction film, but its reality is much harsher than any script. Located in northern Russia, it is one of the most isolated and coldest cities in the world. The cold is not the only challenge here. The city is also known for being one of the most polluted on the planet, due to its metallurgical industries. Living in Norilsk means facing ice, darkness, and isolation, a combination few can handle. The city was founded during the Soviet period, built with the hands of prisoners who worked in inhumane conditions. Today, Norilsk is an example of resistance. Temperatures often drop below 30 degrees C, and snow covers everything for much of the year. Furthermore, being so far north, the city experiences long periods of total darkness, which directly affects the mood and mental health of its inhabitants. But the biggest enemy of those living in Norilsk may be isolation. There are no roads connecting the city to the rest of the country. To get out of there, you have to fly or wait for the brief summer period, when the rivers thaw enough to allow transport. This separation from the outside world creates a unique feeling of dependence and unity among residents, who face the adversities of climate and distance together. Despite all the challenges, life goes on in Norilsk. Industries continue to operate, and the community finds ways to stay strong. The city survives not only because of its mineral riches, but also because of the resilience of its people, who have learned to make ice and solitude inseparable companions. In the end, living in Norilsk is more than a matter of physical survival. It's a constant test of mental toughness. Oymyakon, a small village in Siberia, is known as the coldest inhabited place on Earth. In winter, temperatures can drop to a staggering 60 degrees C, freezing to what seems impossible. Oymyakon is a place where the simple act of breathing in the open air can cause pain. Life here is not just a battle against the cold, but a lesson in how human beings can adapt to extremes. The residents of Oymyakon have developed a routine as freezing as the surrounding landscape. The houses are equipped with wood stoves that burn day and night, as any carelessness can result in serious danger. Cars are never turned off, as the risk of the engine freezing is constant. Here, the cold is not just a force of nature, it is a presence that dictates the rhythm of all activities, and how to maintain infrastructure in a place where the ground is frozen all year round. In Oymyakon, the soil is the famous permafrost, and nothing can be built directly on it. Buildings need to be elevated so that the heat inside doesn't melt the ice and cause landslides. Oymyakons, with their adapted routine, have become accustomed to the idea that any error in engineering can have fatal consequences. Interestingly, culture and traditions play a vital role in survival in Oymyakon. The inhabitants have a deep respect for the climate, and many of their daily activities, including hunting and fishing, follow rituals passed down from generation to generation. It's a small village, but the cold has turned it into a symbol of the human capacity to resist and adapt. Here, extreme cold does not destroy. It strengthens. Imagine living in a place where the sun disappears for months at a time. This is the reality of Barrow, or Utqiagvik, in Alaska, the northernmost city in the United States. During winter, the inhabitants spend more than 60 days without seeing sunlight, plunged into deep darkness. Life in Barrow is a true test of mental resilience, where the extreme cold and lack of light shape not only the routine, but the very spirit of the residents. The phenomenon of polar night may seem like something out of fiction, but for those who live in Barrow, it is an everyday fact. During this period, constant darkness requires drastic adaptations. The clock loses some meaning, and activities are based more on necessity than on the natural cycle of day and night. But don't think that life stops. On the contrary, the community is extremely active, finding ways to keep their spirits high amid the darkness. The culture of the native Inuit has a strong presence in Barrow, and for them, the cold and darkness are more than adversity. They are a part of their identity. Whale hunting, for example, is a tradition that remains alive, even in extreme conditions. And this connection to land and sea helps inhabitants maintain a sense of purpose and community, even when everything around them seems frozen and bleak. But not everything is darkness. When the sun finally comes back, it's like a rebirth for the city. The return of light brings with it new energy, as if each ray of sunlight is a reminder that despite challenges, life always finds a way to flourish. And could you live for months without seeing the sun, facing cold and darkness? In Barrow, this is the reality of every winter, a real challenge to the body and mind. Vorkuta, a city that appears to have been frozen by both time and climate, has a dark and freezing history. Founded during the Soviet era, Vorkuta began as a forced labor camp where prisoners were sent to extract coal under inhumane conditions. Even after the end of the gulags, the relentless cold and isolation continued to mark life in the city, which today struggles to survive amid decay and abandonment. Winter in Vorkuta is brutal, with temperatures often dropping below 30°C and winds that feel like they cut through your skin. The city faces unique challenges, not only because of its remote location in the Arctic Circle, but also because of its economic decline. Many families left Vorkuta in search of better opportunities, and what remains are abandoned buildings, deserted streets, and a resilient population that insists on staying. Despite gradual abandonment, some people still call Vorkuta home. Why would anyone stay in such a cold and desolate place? The answer, for many, lies in the deep roots they have in the city, whether through family history or personal resistance. They have adapted to the cold, darkness, and loneliness, creating a close-knit community that shares the burdens and small joys of daily life. Living in Vorkuta is like living in a world apart, where time seems to have stopped, but life persists. The frozen city offers an intriguing view of how humans are capable of adapting to extremes. With each harsh winter, the population dwindles a little more, but the city is still there, stubbornly resisting the relentless forces of nature and time. Reykjavik, capital of Iceland, is a place where intense cold and natural beauty coexist in harmony. Surrounded by mountains and bathed by the icy waters of the North Atlantic, the city is an example of how the cold can be both a challenge and an inspiration. The winter here is long, but the strength of Icelandic nature, with its volcanic landscapes and geysers, offers a unique contrast to the harshness of the climate. It is a place where the cold does not discourage, but invites you to live in an even more vibrant way. For Icelanders, the cold is part of everyday life, but they have a secret weapon to face it: natural hot springs. The famous Blue Lagoon, a pool of heated geothermal waters, is a refuge for locals and tourists during the winter months. These warm, mineral-rich waters not only warm the bodies, but also calm the mind. It is a clear example of how nature, even in its coldest form, offers means of comfort and well-being. Reykjavik is also known for its innovative spirit and the way the cold has influenced its culture. Winter is a time when people gather at home to tell stories, celebrate music, and enjoy local cuisine. It's not uncommon for the long winter nights to be filled with soul-warming festivals and celebrations, like the famous Winter Festival, which lights up the city's streets with art and music. But like all northern cities, Reykjavik also faces winter challenges. The cold, darkness, and snowstorms can be unforgiving, but the resilience of the Icelandic people is what truly shines. They embrace winter with optimism, knowing that no matter how long it may be, spring always arrives. And anyone who lives in Reykjavik knows that the strength of nature lies in both the ice and the fire that rises from its depths. Salla, a small town in the remote region of Lapland, is the icy heart of Finland. During winter, temperatures can drop below 40°C, and snow becomes a constant presence. Extreme cold shapes every aspect of life, but for the inhabitants of Salla, winter is more than just a season. It is a way of living, a tradition that spans generations. Here, the cold brings people together, strengthens community bonds, and creates a unique identity for those who call this place home. The Sami culture, one of the indigenous peoples who inhabit the region, is a living example of how people adapt to extreme cold. Its ancient traditions, such as reindeer husbandry and wearing fur clothing, help it endure the harsh winter. The cold, for them, is not an enemy, but a part of nature that must be respected. The long Arctic nights, lit only by the northern lights, make Salla a place where time seems to slow down, allowing its inhabitants to live in harmony with the land. In addition to its natural beauty, Salla is known for its polar nights, where the sun disappears for weeks on end. During this period, the city seems to plunge into a deep silence, where the intense cold creates an almost surreal scenario. However, residents find ways to make the most of this time, whether it's outdoor activities like skiing and sledding races or heartwarming winter festivals. Despite the isolation and freezing cold, life in Sala is surprisingly vibrant. Winter, with all its challenges, also brings a sense of peace and communion with nature. Here, the cold is not seen as an obstacle, but as an essential part of life. For those who live in Sala, surviving the Arctic winter is a rite of passage, a test of endurance that few in the world experience. Northern Canada, vast and inhospitable, is one of the coldest and most remote regions on the planet. Here, winter is not just a season. It dominates most of the year, transforming the landscape into a true desert of ice. The communities living in these lands face daily challenges that seem almost unthinkable to those accustomed to a milder climate. The extreme cold, combined with the isolated vastness, creates a life that requires constant adaptation, where every movement is carefully planned to face the relentless nature. The Inuit, the indigenous people of the Canadian North, are masters at surviving in this extreme environment. They have developed ancient techniques that allow not only survival, but a deep connection with ice and snow. Igloos, for example, are an invention that defies logic, houses made of snow that insulate internal heat. For the Inuit, ice is more than a natural element. It is a part of their culture, a symbol of resilience and wisdom passed down from generation to generation. Hunting and fishing are essential activities for survival in northern Canada. In a place where growing food is impossible for much of the year, communities depend on what the land and sea offer. Hunters must brave freezing temperatures and long journeys across the ice, risking their lives to ensure their families have enough to eat. It is a hard life, but marked by a deep respect for nature and its cycles. Despite the difficulties, northern Canada offers unparalleled beauty. The icy vastness, the absolute silence, and the lights of the northern lights create an almost mystical setting. For those who can see beyond the cold, the icy desert reveals a unique peace, where time seems to stop and life moves in harmony with the seasons. And you, would you be able to live in a place where the cold shapes every aspect of existence? Working outdoors in extreme climates is a task for those strong in body and mind. Whether in the vast tundras of Siberia or the icy deserts of Canada, many people brave the bitter cold every day to make a living. Fishermen, miners, and even construction workers face temperatures that would freeze most of us. In these places, work is not just a matter of financial survival, but of resistance to the environment itself. Every step outdoors requires preparation and attention, as the extreme cold does not forgive mistakes. Clothing and equipment are essential for anyone working in sub-zero temperatures. Layers of wool, heavy coats, and sturdy boots are not luxuries but tools of the trade. Body warming is a priority, and staying dry is vital, as any moisture can quickly turn to ice against the skin. The freezing wind, which can often be more dangerous than the cold itself, makes everything more challenging. However, for those who know the secrets of the climate, the work continues, day after day. But work in these environments is not just physical. The mental battle is constant. Long journeys under gray skies and feelings of isolation can be exhausting. It takes a strong mentality to continue when the body is already exhausted, when the cold seems to give no respite, and the ice freezes even the slightest movement. In many cases, working outdoors in these conditions becomes a test of psychological resistance. However, there is an indescribable beauty in being immersed in raw nature. The sun rising over an icy landscape, the first signs of life in the melting ice, and the satisfaction of conquering another day against the cold create a unique connection with the environment. Working outdoors in extreme climates isn't just a job. It's a constant journey of resilience. But would you be able to endure this kind of life, day after day, facing the cold without knowing when it will give a respite? Extreme cold doesn't just affect the environment around us, it directly impacts human health. Living in regions where temperatures drop drastically can bring severe challenges to the body. When the thermometer drops, the body needs to work twice as hard to stay warm. Blood vessels constrict, the heart speeds up, and the body consumes more calories to maintain a stable temperature. However, extreme cold can quickly lead to dangers such as hypothermia, where the body temperature drops to dangerous levels. Another constant risk in freezing climates is frostbite, which can occur within minutes depending on exposure to the cold. Fingers, toes, and ears are the most vulnerable parts. The initial tingling sensation soon turns into numbness, and without proper treatment, the tissue can become permanently damaged. But it's not just the physical body that suffers. Mental health is also at stake. A lack of sunlight for long periods, common in more northern regions, can cause seasonal depression, a disorder that affects mood and behavior. However, it's not all disadvantages. Populations that have lived in cold climates for generations have developed impressive resistance. Studies show that these people are more likely to have more efficient cardiovascular systems, as the heart has to work harder to pump blood and keep the body warm. Furthermore, residents of these regions tend to adopt eating habits rich in calories and healthy fats, necessary to keep the body functioning in such extreme conditions. Despite the dangers, many find ways to maintain balanced health even in the intense cold. Regular physical activity, such as snowshoeing or skiing, as well as a rich and adapted diet, helps to face the challenges that harsh winter imposes on the body. Still, the cold can be relentless, and care for your health, both physical and mental, must be doubled. After all, living on ice is a constant battle to preserve your body and mind. Food in regions of extreme cold goes far beyond simply satisfying hunger. It is a matter of survival. In environments where the body needs to generate constant heat to stay warm, food plays a crucial role. Diets in these areas are rich in calories and fat, ensuring that inhabitants have the energy they need to face the low temperatures. In the coldest regions of the world, it is common to find meals centered on heavy meats, fish rich in oils, and foods that help warm the body from the inside out. A classic example is the diet of the Inuit in the Arctic, which includes seal meat, whale meat, and fatty fish like salmon. These foods, rich in omega-3s, are essential for keeping the body healthy in such extreme conditions. In addition, they provide the calories necessary to compensate for the effort the body makes to keep warm. Eating raw foods, such as frozen fish meat, may seem strange to many, but in these regions, it is a tradition that guarantees essential nutrients. Hot soups and stews are another essential element in meals in cold regions. In countries like Russia, where the winter is harsh, borscht, a beetroot and meat soup, is a comforting dish that warms the body. In Finland, dishes such as karjalan paisti, a meat stew, are common during the winter months. These meals, rich in protein and calories, help sustain the body in sub-zero temperatures. In addition to food, hot drinks also play an important role. Herbal teas, coffee, and even liquid soups are consumed throughout the day, keeping the body warm. And in some regions, it is common to consume alcoholic drinks such as vodka, which, despite not being recommended as a real warming agent, is part of the local culture. To survive extreme cold, food needs to be robust, nutritious, and, above all, capable of sustaining the body in an environment that constantly challenges the limits of human resistance. Living in the coldest cities in the world is not just a matter of personal adaptation, but also a monumental logistical challenge. When temperatures drop below freezing for months on end, keeping essential services running becomes a complex mission. Roads, for example, need to be constantly cleared of snow and ice, while vehicles are adapted to withstand the cold. In some regions, cars are never turned off as the risk of the engine freezing is high. Transport logistics is a continuous struggle against the forces of nature. Keeping electricity and heating fully operational is another critical priority. In places like Yakutsk and Norilsk, where the cold is extreme, power failures can be fatal. Cities need reinforced electrical grids and continuous heating systems, which often rely on geothermal sources or coal plants. To avoid blackouts, the infrastructure is designed to withstand extreme conditions, and maintenance work is constant, even when snowstorms make access difficult. Water supply is also a challenge in these regions. Pipes need to be buried deep in the ground to prevent them from freezing. And when temperatures drop dramatically, keeping the water flow running requires a delicate balance of engineering and constant vigilance. A small mistake can result in burst pipes and long periods without water. A dangerous scenario in an environment where survival depends on heat. The logistics of living in such cold regions depend not only on infrastructure, but also on the resilience of communities. The coldest cities in the world are true fortresses against winter, where every detail is thought out to ensure that life continues. From small emergency generators in homes to complex transportation and power systems, everything is adapted to withstand the relentless cold. However, each technical solution hides a constant battle against nature. A battle that doesn't end with winter. Growing up in a city where the cold prevails for much of the year is a unique experience for children. From an early age, they learn that winter is not an obstacle, but part of life. For many of them, activities like playing in the snow or skiing are as common as cycling in other parts of the world. However, living in such a frigid environment also presents challenges that children must face, from the harshness of the climate to the limitations imposed by prolonged darkness. Winter clothes are a second skin for these children. Instead of shorts and t-shirts, their wardrobe is dominated by heavy coats, gloves, and thermal boots. Even when going to school, the ritual of getting dressed to face the cold can be a time-consuming task. The path to school, often walked in the dark, requires extra attention and, in some cases, is accompanied by parents concerned about the extreme conditions. But, once adapted, children face these conditions with a surprising naturalness. Outdoor activities are an important part of growing up in cold regions. Children learn to have fun in the winter in ways most people can't even imagine. Skiing, ice skating, and even sled racing are part of everyday life. Winter festivals and local competitions keep community spirit alive, helping turn the cold weather into an opportunity to bond and have fun. School life is also adapted to the weather, with classes sometimes including lessons on how to deal with cold and snow. However, harsh weather can also have its effects. In some cities, children face long periods without seeing sunlight, which can affect their mood and behavior. To compensate, parents and schools invest in activities that maintain mental well-being, in addition to ensuring that children receive artificial light at strategic times. Growing up in a place like this shapes personality, creating resilient children who from an early age learn to face adversity and to thrive in the midst of it. In places where winter seems never-ending, winter festivals and traditions are more than just celebrations. They're a relief to the spirit. In the colder months, communities around the world come together for festivals that not only celebrate local culture, but also help people endure the extreme cold. These celebrations are marked by impressive ice sculptures, outdoor competitions, and bonding moments that keep you warm even when temperatures drop. In Russia, the International Ice Sculpture Festival in Moscow is a shining example of how winter can become a canvas for human creativity. Artists from around the world carve enormous masterpieces out of ice, transforming the city into an open-air museum. In Sapporo, Japan, the Snow Festival is a global attraction, with gigantic ice sculptures and sporting competitions that attract thousands of visitors. These events show how winter can be an opportunity to create art and celebrate life even in the coldest weather. But it's not just the sculptures that enchant. In many Arctic regions, dog sled racing is a tradition that dates back centuries. Festivals like the Iditarod in Alaska are a celebration of human and animal resilience in extreme conditions. The competitions are intense, and the connection between participants and their dogs is a reflection of the respect these cultures have for winter. In these events, the cold is not seen as an enemy, but as a stage for skill and courage. Winter festivals are also times for introspection and community togetherness. During the long months of darkness, these celebrations help keep spirits high. Traditional bonfires, dances, and songs bring families and friends together, creating a strong sense of belonging. In these regions, the cold brings people together in unique ways, turning adversity into an opportunity to strengthen cultural and community bonds. And so, winter becomes more than a season. It turns into a celebration of life itself. Building a house capable of facing extreme cold is a true art. In regions where winter lasts for months and temperatures plummet below zero, every construction detail needs to be thought of to ensure not only comfort, but survival. The architecture of these homes is designed to retain heat and resist frost. From the choice of materials to the strategic positioning of windows, every aspect is carefully planned to protect residents against the relentless cold. Houses in the coldest cities in the world generally have thick walls with reinforced thermal insulation. The use of materials such as rock wool or rigid foam is common, as they help keep the heat inside the house while the freezing wind stays outside. Windows, generally smaller and with double or triple glazing, prevent heat loss. Additionally, it is common for homes to be built on piles or raised platforms, especially in regions with permafrost, to prevent the heat from the home from melting the frozen ground and compromising the stability of the structure. The heating system is the heart of these homes. In cities like Reykjavik, for example, geothermal sources are a boon, allowing homes to be heated efficiently and sustainably. In other places, oil heaters, wood stoves, or central heating systems are essential. Keeping your home warm during the colder months requires constant attention, and a heating failure can turn a cozy space into a deadly hazard in a matter of hours. In addition to the structure and heating, the design of the houses also takes comfort and practicality into account. Entrances are often designed with transition areas where people can shed their multiple layers of clothing before entering the heated space. These antechambers help prevent cold air from entering homes. In the end, living in a house like this is not just a matter of being sheltered, but of being prepared to face winter with intelligence and safety. The animals that inhabit the coldest regions of the planet are true masters of adaptation. In places where extreme cold dominates most of the year, these living beings have developed impressive strategies to survive. From thick layers of blubber to unique abilities to hunt and hide, each species that lives in these icy areas is an example of nature's incredible ability to adjust to the most inhospitable environments. The polar bear, for example, is the largest land predator in the Arctic. Its thick layer of fat and fur protects it from freezing temperatures, while its large, furry paws act as snowshoes, allowing it to walk nimbly on ice. Other animals, like the Arctic fox, have also evolved to survive the cold. With fur that changes color to blend in with its surroundings, the fox is an example of an intelligent adaptation that allows it to hunt effectively in an environment where food is scarce. In addition to mammals, birds also have their place in cold regions. The emperor penguin, which lives in Antarctica, withstands freezing winds and temperatures that can reach 60 degrees C. Its survival depends on collaboration between members of the colony, who group together to conserve heat. Each penguin takes a turn in the center of the group, where the temperature is warmest, while others endure the cold on the outer edges. It is a fascinating example of how life organizes itself to resist the most adverse conditions. Interestingly, the cities that emerge in these regions also need to deal with the presence of local fauna. Reindeer, for example, roam freely through the streets in some Arctic cities, while in others, like Churchill, Canada, it's common to spot polar bears nearby. The coexistence between humans and animals in these areas is a delicate dance, where the survival of both depends on respecting the limits imposed by the climate and nature. Living in an extreme cold climate goes beyond a simple physical issue. It shapes the personalities of those who face winter day after day. In cities where ice and darkness last for months, inhabitants develop a unique resilience and internal strength that helps them face the challenges posed by the environment. The coldness of the climate seems to strengthen the spirit, making people more hardened on the outside, but at the same time, warm and welcoming on the inside. Extreme cold requires a different mindset. The day-to-day routine turns into constant preparation to face the weather, which makes people more disciplined and organized. Simple tasks, such as leaving the house or even going to work, require detailed planning. This need to always be ready for the unexpected creates individuals who are always attentive and prepared, ready to deal with unforeseen events. But the cold also teaches the importance of community. In places where conditions are so harsh, people learn to trust each other. The feeling of isolation that winter brings makes the bonds between neighbors and friends even stronger. Gatherings around a fireplace or at winter festivals are precious moments to share stories, create memories, and strengthen bonds. The cold, which could keep people apart, ends up bringing together those who live in these regions. And the humor? It is essential to survive the harsh winter. In many of these communities, humor is a way of dealing with adverse weather conditions. Laughter helps ease the weight of long nights and freezing mornings. Thus, the cold, which seems so unforgiving, becomes an element that not only shapes character, but also deepens the connection between those who share this unique experience. Living in extreme cold is ultimately a lesson in strength, adaptability, and solidarity. For many, extreme cold is synonymous with discomfort, but for adventurers, these frozen cities offer a unique experience. Tourism in the coldest regions of the world has grown, attracting those seeking a deeper connection with nature and a challenge that few are willing to take on. The opportunity to witness phenomena such as the Northern Lights or explore pristine snow-covered landscapes turns these cities into irresistible destinations. However, visiting these places requires different preparation, where the cold is an enemy that tourists need to learn to respect. The main attraction in many of these cities is the chance to see nature in its purest form. Places like Tromsø, Norway, and Churchill, Canada, offer tourists the chance to see iconic animals like polar bears and whales up close, or to be dazzled by the dancing lights of the Northern Lights. But it's not just about appreciating the beauty. You have to be prepared. Appropriate clothing, specialized guides, and a cold weather mindset are essential to enjoy what these regions have to offer. On the other hand, tourism in these cities is not free from logistical challenges. Infrastructure is often limited, and weather conditions can change quickly, resulting in flight cancellations, roads blocked by snow, and even risks of freezing. Visitors who come in search of adventure should be aware that despite the natural wonders, the cold can be unforgiving. This balance between fascination and danger makes tourism in these areas a unique experience, where the reward is as great as the risk. Still, winter tourism has a significant impact on the economy of these regions. Many of these destinations depend on the influx of tourists during the peak winter season to support their local economy. Guides, hotels, and transport companies prepare all year round to welcome visitors who are willing to face the cold. So, while the cold keeps many away, it also attracts those who see freezing cities as a rare opportunity to connect with nature and their own personal limits. The world's coldest cities face an uncertain future, shaped by climate change and the impact these transformations could have on their icy environments. With global warming, temperatures in these regions are rising at an alarming rate, and what once seemed eternal, like permafrost and glaciers, are beginning to melt. This scenario presents a series of challenges and concerns for communities that have always lived in harmony with extreme cold. What will it be like to live in cities where the ice is disappearing? The melting of permafrost, for example, is one of the biggest threats these regions face. This permanently frozen ground serves as the foundation for much infrastructure, and as it thaws, the ground becomes unstable. Buildings, roads, and pipes can collapse, causing irreversible damage and putting the lives of inhabitants at risk. Global warming, which seemed distant to many, now directly affects the physical and economic stability of these cities. Climate change also has a significant impact on local wildlife. Species that depend on ice, such as polar bears and seals, are seeing their natural habitats disappear. This not only puts biodiversity at risk, but also affects the way of life of many indigenous communities who depend on these animals for their subsistence. The delicate balance between man and nature in these regions is being threatened, and solutions to this problem are increasingly urgent. Despite the challenges, colder cities are also looking for ways to adapt to this new scenario. Technological innovations, such as geothermal energy systems and more efficient buildings, are being explored to ensure that life continues despite global warming. The future of these cities will depend on the ability of their populations to adapt to changes, to protect their traditions, and at the same time, to seek new ways of coexisting with the changing climate. What was once a fight against the cold now becomes a battle to preserve a way of life at risk. Surviving a day in the coldest cities in the world is not something that can be done without preparation. To face temperatures that can plummet to freezing levels, it takes more than just willpower. It takes knowledge and strategy. The first step to surviving extreme cold is ensuring you are appropriately dressed. Layers of clothing are essential. A base layer to absorb moisture, an insulating layer to retain heat, and an outer layer that is wind and water resistant. And, of course, don't forget the appropriate gloves, hat, and boots, as the body loses a lot of heat through the extremities. Transport in such cold climates also requires special attention. If you need to drive, it's crucial to make sure your car is equipped for the cold. This means appropriate tires, a good heating system, and, in many cases, leaving the engine running to prevent it from freezing. For those who depend on public transport, patience and readiness are essential, as delays caused by snowfall are common. At these times, it is always useful to have a bottle of hot drink on hand to keep your body temperature in balance. Another vital tip is to stay active. The cold can be immobilizing, but it's important not to stay still for too long. Moving your body generates heat, and in extreme conditions, this can make the difference between comfort and freezing. Walking in the snow or doing light exercise, even at home, helps blood circulation and keeps the body warm. In towns where the sun disappears for weeks or months, like Barrow, staying physically active also helps combat the feeling of lethargy that darkness brings. Furthermore, maintaining a diet rich in calories is essential to face the cold. The body uses much more energy to keep warm in extreme climates, so it is necessary to consume foods that provide this extra energy. Hot soups, fatty meats, and carbohydrate-rich foods are favorites in places like Yakutsk and Oymyakon. These foods not only help maintain body temperature, but also provide a feeling of comfort and satiety. during the long winter days. Surviving in extreme cold is an art, and those who have mastered this art know that every detail counts. We have reached the end of this journey through the coldest cities in the world, and the question that remains in the air is, could you handle it? Living in an environment where the cold dominates every aspect of life is not for everyone. You need to have more than physical resistance. You need to have the mentality of someone who is ready to face what seems impossible. Extreme cold turns the simplest routines into daily challenges, and only those who have lived in places like Oymyakon or Norilsk can truly understand what this means. But this is not just a question of survival. It is proof of how human beings are able to adapt to any environment, no matter how hostile it may seem. When exploring the stories of these cities, it becomes clear that there is an invisible force that unites these communities. The will to resist, to continue, even when everything around them seems to freeze. And in some ways, this reflects something we can all learn from. After all, each of us, at some point in our lives, faces our own winter. Have you ever stopped to think about how the environment you live in shapes who you are? Perhaps the extreme cold of places like Barrow or Yakutsk seems distant, but the lessons they teach about resilience, community, and adaptation are universal. And then the question echoes again. Could you live like this, embracing the cold and making it your constant companion?
Hey explorers, if you love discovering the amazing curiosities and stories we share here on Exploring Nations, how about supporting the channel with just $1? This small gesture can make a big difference and is essential to keep this content going. Without your support, our journey might be cut short. And there's more. When you shop on Amazon, use our special link. It costs you nothing extra, plus you get an exclusive discount and it helps us out a lot. The links for donations and Amazon are pinned in the first comment. Don't let this adventure stop, we're counting on you. Subscribe to our channel, leave a like, and drop us a comment.